faculty and other researchers and even students to help them, get the best out of the computational tools and thinking that's available to them. So I'm happy to be here today to talk to many of you students that are here. So just to give a little brief background about myself, I've been working with the MathWorks for about 2 years now. And prior to working at the MathWorks, I was working for the Boeing company in Seattle. I worked there for about 7 years as a propulsion systems engineer, focusing mainly on the fuel systems. And a lot of the development, analysis, test, and certification that I did for the fuel system was predominantly using MATLAB and Simulink to help perform a lot of that work. So that kind of leads us into what we're going to talk about today is give a little bit about who MathWorks is, the industries that we touch, and things that will probably be beneficial and of interest to you. And then we'll open up for Q&A shortly after. So just I guess what I'd like to do is make this as interactive as possible, so you don't necessarily have to wait till the end, but I'd love to see any reactions or any chats in the chat window for some things that I may ask you throughout the presentation. So just a I guess a first quick, oh, sorry about that. Yeah, just a first quick question. I'd just like to get a gauge of who here has actually heard of what MathWorks actually does, right? I mean, I know you probably know the name MathWorks now because you see it. The question is, do you know fully what the company is about? And you can just say yes or no in the chat window, and we can go from there. By knowing this, it kind of gives me a little bit better idea of how to cater this talk to make sure that I'm giving you all the idea of what MathWorks brings to the table. So let me just go to the chat window real quick. Okay. Awesome. Okay, good. So we have some pretty good across the board. So Rohan, just a quick clarification. So MathWorks is the actual company itself. MATLAB is a product that the MathWorks develops. So MATLAB isn't its own separate company. It's just the product that we create as the MathWorks. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and get back into it. So for those of you that may not be familiar, right, our flagship product is MATLAB. And for those of you who may not have used MATLAB before, the idea behind it is that it's a programming environment that allows you to do many different things, right? You can do post-processing or pre-processing of your data. You can do data analysis, be able to not only bring in your data, but create algorithms to help you either speed it up or rather automate the work that you're doing. And furthermore, even be able to share it and provide it to other of your colleagues if you're sharing this information as a report, or whether you're sharing it as a deployable set of code for someone else to go run on their own machine and look at the work that you've done. So that's kind of the MATLAB interface in a nutshell. And MATLAB is the main interface, but there's many products that make up MATLAB, and with this link, you'll see that there is a whole family of those. But we'll touch on some of the top level ones. In combination with MATLAB is, you could say, its partner program, Simulink. So Simulink is accessed through the MATLAB platform. And Simulink, what that is it focuses on being a graphical environment for dragging and dropping block diagrams, similar to what you see on the screen. So the difference here is that rather than writing code, let's say you don't know how to write code, or you're not familiar with writing code, you can actually express the same equations or ideas through block diagrams, right? So it's a more interactive, more visual process for you to start designing the systems that you have interest in. This tool actually was predominantly what I used at Boeing when it came to developing physical real life systems. and testing them. So those are the two main products. Beyond that, we have many other MATLAB products that are associated with it, probably at least about 100, and we keep continuously adding more. So there's a on our website, there are many different buckets in which these products fall in, and you'll start to see that as we go further through the presentation. But some key ones to highlight here are the machine learning, deep learning, even the reinforcement learning types of products that we provide within our tool suite. So I've given you a little bit about some of the different products. Let's talk about the company as a whole. So MathWorks is headquartered in Natick, Massachusetts. We have quite a few field offices, as you can see on the map. There are many different orange dots. I'm over on the one in Texas. So that's where we have a satellite office in Texas, and that's where I'm located. We have about, so this is a little out of date. We have about actually closer to 5,100, if not more, staff around the world, and we're continuously hiring. The revenue that we've generated from our software and even our services as well. So not only do we do products, but we also do services. Has been well over $1 billion since 2018, and then we're also a privately held company, so we're not publicly traded. For some of you, that may be interesting. For others, you might actually like that. It's very likely that if and when you graduate, you're more than likely going to be working for a public company. And there's pros and cons and benefits to that, but we can always talk about that later. And then here's just a list of all the different areas around the world that we touch, both Europe and Asia Pacific. So within the MathWorks, we have a specific culture where we focus on investing in our own people, right? One of the big things there is that every year we are dedicated, or at least highly encouraged, if not almost, to a point where it becomes more of a deliverable, that we want to make sure that everyone gets at least 40 hours of training in per year. And that training could range from technical skills to soft skills to anything across the board that helps enhance you as not only an engineer, but also as an employee overall. Many of the folks in our company have bachelor's degrees, the vast majority. Along with that, about 66% of the staff have master's degrees, and then 16% of those have PhDs. So all across the board, very, very bright, brilliant, some of the best and brightest people I've ever met that are working on some of the most interesting projects in all different facets. And that's kind of how I look at MathWorks. Is it's more of a jack of all trades, right? It touches everything you could possibly think of in the space of scientific and computational thinking. That's the space it operates in. And even to this day, we still have many job openings. So the opportunities are definitely open and available. And just a little bit more about that. So as I've mentioned, there are many users around the world, roughly 4 million. But again, this number continues to grow year after year. And we're almost in every single country in the world, which is rather amazing. And then, of course, the bulk of who uses our products are typically folks at universities, such as yourselves, at UT Arlington, many corporations, and even local governments. And then definitely the top 10 aerospace and automotive companies are all using MATLAB and Simulink to help design and test and certify their products. Like I said, so Boeing is one of them. Airbus is also another one. GM and Ford are also big ones up there. And then on top of that, we also have a lot of the different internet companies that are using our products. And so I want to pause right here and ask you all a question of, can you guess the 3 that are really big users of MATLAB? Just go ahead and put those in the chat window. I'd love to see your answers of what you come up with. Now, which of the top 3 internet or tech companies are using MATLAB? So if you excuse me for a moment, I need to exit out of the presentation in order to take a look here. Okay, I don't see any answers in yet. All right, Google. Okay. Well, you got 1 out of the 3. Close. So close with Microsoft. So it's actually Google, Amazon, and Facebook. Those are the three of the top 5 that are actually heavily using our products. And speaking of these top companies, back in 2019, there was a survey done to kind of see all the different companies that are hiring new hires out of college. And one thing that was very prominent on their applications or request for skills was MATLAB. Was asking if they use MATLAB. And then you should also take notice that there's Python on there, there's R on there in some cases. So I think the bigger picture here is that you will need software skills going into the workforce. In this day and age, that is a must. It is a very competitive market, and having those skills will only further net you a better opportunity. And again, we're not talking about just internet companies or things like that. We're talking about technical engineering companies, right? The Boeings and the Lockheed Martins, the GMs and stuff like that. So everyone is focusing on moving towards software-driven work. It's cheaper, it's faster, it's less risky, and it allows engineers to do the right work the first time. So so just overall, this is where the trend has been going and where it's going to continue to go. But again, these aren't the only companies or the only areas in which we touch on. Here's some of the major key industries. So you can take a look at just a few that we have as a list on here, from energy production to even financial services, communications, biotech, process industries like oil refinement, semiconductors, and things of the like. So again, pretty much any industry that you could think of, we more than likely do support them and help them in some way in terms of the work that they're doing, because ultimately these businesses and these industries have certain workflows, and that's what MathWorks is in support of, is helping to provide tools that support business workflows, whether it be data analysis or model-based design or things like that. So here I just want to give you a few different ideas of, I'm going to show you 3 different examples of some of our current customers that are actually using our products today and what they're using them for. So Subaru here is using an advanced braking system for their, I guess that doesn't, okay, there we go. Got it. Let's see if that plays on your end. No. Okay, for some reason the video is not playing, but that's fine. We can skip that for now. But the idea there is, so Subaru, what they're currently doing is they're using they're using data analysis. Basically, they're taking information from sensors on the car. What they're doing is they're using machine learning and deep learning programs to be able to perceive and see different cars, so they can develop their pre-collision braking system. So this allows them to have the computer on board of the car will automatically detect when it starts to get close to a vehicle and slow down the vehicle and things like that. And then taking it over to the German Aerospace Center, they're focusing on developing autonomous robots that have many different degrees of freedom. And what you see here is Justin the robot, which is one that they've built. I have a feeling that the video probably won't play here either, but the idea here is Justin, as you can, at least you can see a picture of the robot, is they've built this robot to do many different things, right? What they initially tested him out for was to be able to perceive and understand what it looks like to have a baseball. So they're using deep learning algorithms there as well. They're also using a lot of Simulink and model-based design to help develop Justin, because as you probably could imagine, building a robot isn't cheap, and it's not easy. This is a very complicated set of systems, let alone you have to think about all the different pieces that come together, whether it be thermal, fluid, mechanical, electrical, even software, right? So there's a lot of things happening within this one unit that have to come together seamlessly. And they use Simulink to simulate all these different domains to be able to get a good idea of what the system would do, how it would perform before they actually go and build Justin in real life. And that's what we call model-based design. And that's how you can help save time and cost, by building something in a simulation environment before actually going to build it in the real world. And this is a workflow that the top companies that you can think of are using to help develop their products, from airplanes to cars to washing machines, you name it. And then finally, I wish this video would play because this is really cool. So at Georgia Tech, this is a young man who lost his arm, or at least his forearm, in a work-related accident. And so prior to him losing his arm, he was a really talented drummer. And what happened was Georgia Tech and some researchers got together and helped to develop a prosthetic arm that would actually allow him to continue drumming. And then so that's what you see right there. That's his prosthetic arm with the drumsticks attached. And the video is really cool because it allows him to do so much more than he could with his own human arm in terms of drumming. But yeah, you get there's a clip there. Unfortunately, the video is not playing for whatever reason. But I think this is just another fascinating look of just good engineering and science and coming together to help other people. And so one of the things that they did here was they focused on using Simulink to develop how this robotic arm should work. And then they generated deployable C code from that model and then put it onto a computer chip that is what's driving that robotic arm. So that's just a few different areas, right? We touched on. But it's very possible that you may not go into industry after you graduate, right? There may be some of you who are very ambitious that want to go into entrepreneurship, right? Maybe build your own invention, be the next Nikola Tesla or something, right? And so MathWorks has a startup program that helps to accelerate your ideas and get them up to speed so you can actually get to market quicker. And that involves us helping to provide our tools in order for you to get to there quicker. And then here's some of the different companies that have already gone through that program and used it to get to where they're at. So again, the idea is you have an idea. This is a program that you can apply for through the MathWorks website, and if you get selected, the idea is that we're going to help you get up to speed to where you can actually get to the point where you're actually able to start selling your product for some profit, or at least revenue. But while you're still in school, there is opportunity to join student competitions, right? MathWorks supports many student competitions around the globe, literally around the world in many different countries, the same ones that we have offices in, and more. In many different fields, right? From biotech to aerospace, even datathons, right? Hackathons, when we're talking about doing machine learning, deep learning tactics and stuff like that. And so these are great opportunities to get involved, let's say your formula team or your SAE team or your IEEE team, et cetera. There's many different clubs that I'm sure you're aware of on campus that focus on competitions, and a lot of that support computationally. MATLAB definitely, or MathWorks definitely helps to encourage, because again, with these student groups, a lot of the opportunity is hands-on. So you get to really learn what it's like to work with real hardware and stuff like that. And so being able to provide the software and things that you'd probably use in the industry is just better experience and exposure for you to put in terms of what skills that you have, ultimately making you a more competitive future employee. Yeah, so unfortunately this was a video as well, and that one does not play, but that's fine. So let's talk about positions, right? So I mentioned there's many positions that are open right now. We have full-time positions, and we also have internships. To talk briefly about the full-time positions, as a new hire engineer straight out of college, if you were to come to work for the MathWorks, what you would be enrolled in is what's called the Engineering Development Program, or Engineering Development Group, EDG. And so what that is, it's kind of like a rotation program where you get to work with many different areas within the MathWorks to kind of find where you might best fit in, right? Initially, early on, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be working with a lot of customers, so you're going to be more customer facing. And the idea is you're going to be helping them with their problems. So ultimately, it allows you to get exposure to working with customers hands-on, but also making sure that you start to see where your interests are. And so those are some of the full-time, but we also offer those as internships as well. Now, here's another interesting role, is the student ambassador role. So the student ambassador role is basically an extension of the group that I work in, right? So I work in a group of about 60 different people, and we're all over the world, right? There's about 10 or 12 of us in the US. So we handle a lot of different universities around the country. And what student ambassadors do is they work as an extension of us within the university. They are directly with everyone, right? They help run events, coordinate with different student organizations, help to bring awareness about the access you have on campus to MATLAB and Simulink and other products that are available to you. And ultimately, it is a paid position. It's typically about 5 hours a week that you invest. And again, depending on the school, there usually is a open position posted for that. But that's something you'd have to go search for on our jobs website. And here are some of the few that actually were student ambassadors at one point. Rohit, actually the guy in the middle, Rohit is now, he went from being a student ambassador to now actually being in a position, the same position as me, except he's over in the Sweden office. So there is opportunity also even transition from a student ambassador to a potential full-time role and apply for it if that is something of interest to you. But typically, if you're coming out of college, again, if you have no years left, right? Student ambassador positions are for students that still have time within college. But if you're already graduating, it'd be best to apply for a role in our engineering development group. And so after the jobs, right, here's something to just kind of give you some thoughts on is where we're going in terms of what MathWorks is working on and what we're focusing on. Software and everything, right? Remember I told you earlier that it's a lot cheaper to start working in software early before you start building the real product. And then of course, everything is programmable, right? I mean, everything is now being automated or being driven by some kind of software. That's the world we live in, and that's not going to change, right? So this is an area in which we want to continuously focus because we have the capability of deploying C code directly from MATLAB scripting or Simulink models and other products as well. Artificial intelligence, like I mentioned, right? Deep learning, reinforcement learning, machine learning, AI in general is an area, a space that we're always continuously growing and expanding the capabilities we have in order for folks to do their work, whether it be in research or in the real world. Autonomous systems, right? I'm sure many of you on this call probably even own drones, any UAVs or even submersible vehicles or Land Rovers that are autonomous. This is also areas in which we want to continuously expand because there are many companies that are focusing on this. I mean, you can even look at SpaceX, right? When they focus on their future Mars rover. Digital transformation. So with this, I mean, again, we're focusing on completely moving away from the analog, the idea of analog systems, and this is ultimately where the market is driving and where we're going to be supporting, right? And that kind of leads into the electrification of everything. You're seeing electric vehicles everywhere. They're talking about electric airplanes. They're talking about electric everything, right? So electrification is just a very big buzzword in the industry right now of how are we going to start making things more efficient, right? And a lot of these different areas, the mega trends that really do help change, the real kicker is when the government gets involved and starts setting different rules and regulations and certification requirements, right? Once these things come into place, companies have a much stricter guideline of what to follow in order to develop their products. So they're going to need well vetted tools and things like that to help them get to where they need to be. Number one, safely, because again, many of the products that are going to be built through this is for the use of people. And that's the number one rule in engineering, is that we're focusing on the safety of the public. And beyond that, I think this kind of leads into, well, how could I get started or learn about some of these different areas that we're already tackling? Well, if you do have some time, there is what's called a campus-wide license, and that is call it a license that is extended to the entire university, to an entire university for use of all different MATLAB products, whether it be in AI, in model-based design like Simulink, image processing, control systems, you name it, right? Physical modeling, anything and everything. And UT Arlington actually does have a campus-wide license. So if you didn't know, well, now you know. You have unlimited access to MATLAB on campus and off campus, pretty much on any device, as long as you're associated with UT Arlington, right? And if you're looking to get started in some of these areas, part of that package is that there are on-ramps that are available to help you get started. So some of those include the ones that are circled up top or in a square up top, which is getting started with MATLAB or Simulink, even some of the AI stuff, image processing, and actually many more. We've added quite a few more free content in here, and then there's some of the other extended roles, right? So these on-ramps are about 2 hours long in duration. They give you just kind of a brief overview of what the tool is, how it works, give you some good examples of getting started. And then some of the other ones are further in depth. So like the MATLAB fundamentals is actually 23 hours, right? So that gives a far more deep dive of MATLAB and its core competencies and capabilities, just like many of these other ones in AI, in the AI space. So, in conclusion, that wraps up the presentation about, who MathWorks is, the kind of industries we support, the kind of products we have, the kind of jobs we have, and kind of where we're going in the future. And so I think it's about 2:30 now, or about 4:30 now. So I'm free to open up to questions if anyone has any. So.
I had like a small question.
Sure.
The core courses that you mentioned in the last slide,
Mm-hmm.
like, do they have like a certification? Do they have like an exam?
So they have a final example in the training course. It's not a it's not a certification, but you do receive a certificate of completion um, of of the actual course when you complete it. It shows all the different areas because these are modules, so you can do them individually or you could do the whole thing. It really depends on what you want to do. But once you complete it, you can download a certificate to show that you've completed it. But it isn't a standardized certification course. Like we actually have a service for certification of MathWorks products. But the prerequisites for doing that certification is you would have to complete the MATLAB fundamentals course first. So it's a little bit more in depth in terms of getting certified uh, with MATLAB tools.
Got it.
Yeah.
We have one question from Mihir. Do MathWorks provide H1 visa for international students?
So that's a good question here. I am not aware of that. I think the best thing to do would be to check out the jobs that are available on the website, and they'll actually detail out the requirements for what kind of citizenship and things like that, requirements that are needed.
I think he meant to ask, like, does MATLAB provide sponsorship?
Right, that's what I'm saying. I'm not sure about that.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Yeah. So let's see, Noemi has a question. So yes, the engineering development group is open to any engineering major. That's correct. And on the website, it actually gives a list of detailed requirements, but for the most part, it's typically focused towards some kind of STEM related degree. Absolutely.
Some of the people here are doing their bachelor's, so for them, I would like to ask this question: like,
Mhm.
for the student ambassadors program, usually which year of students do they prefer to take?
So that's a good question. I think it really depends on the person themselves and how driven they are to help encourage the use and adoption of MATLAB on campus, because that's typically what their role focuses on is how to get more people using MATLAB and knowing that you have access, how to spread the word and get it to people who may not know about it, that it actually may benefit. So we've had freshmen as student ambassadors. But typically, what I've seen recently is around junior, senior, and even grad students.
Awesome. So basically, anyone who has like an year or a semester remaining can apply for that program.
Yeah, or even two. Again, I think it's beneficial to look at the requirements on the job itself and make that determination on if you think you should apply. But I would encourage anyone to apply to that. Again, there's usually about one student ambassador to each university. So you'd have to look out to verify if there is one that's going to be open for UT Arlington.
Awesome. We have another question from Shan.
So the first question is, are internships department based or are they generally engineering based? So yeah, so internships are typically department based, right? You're going to be going with some specific group of folks, whether it be and more than likely they'll all be technical. So yeah, it's going to be really department centric and not so much specific to uh, your specific discipline in engineering. However, again, it's kind of like guiding your own career path. So if you find that there's an interest area that really focuses on what you uh, worked on in school or something that is of interest to you that's available at the MathWorks, you can try and navigate towards getting into that area. And then your second question, so how do internships provide experience that help prepare for full-time roles? Right. So, I think one of the ideas about graduating college, which I had the same one, is that a lot of it was predicated on having all this massive technical knowledge. The fact of the matter is, you already have that, right? You went through 4, maybe 5, maybe even 6 years of school, maybe even more, to get that engineering degree. So typically, when it comes to these jobs and being able to prepare for full-time roles, it's not so much the technical acumen, but more so the soft skills, right? How do you work well with teams? How do you work well with people? How do you do with customers? How efficient are you, et cetera, right? It's all about the how do you respond to pressure, or how do you respond to timely deadlines and things like that. It's kind of some of the things that you may not get exposed to in school as much, but in when we're talking about getting prepared for a full-time role, the idea is more so focusing on are you trustworthy, are you capable, right? And can you how well do you work again with different groups of people, right? So if you already have the technical skill, that's already checked off the box when they look at your resume. It's really just about how you handle yourself in different settings and situations, how well you communicate. That's probably number one, right? Being able to communicate technical ideas effectively, not only to other technical people, but also to people that don't have a technical background, because you're going to be working with a lot of different people. So I would say I'd say those internship roles will give you some opportunity to get exposed to technical skills, but primarily it's going to help you get exposed to a lot more of the softer skills that are needed. So, Shannon, I hope that answers your question. Excellent.
So I had like another question.
Mm-hmm.
How has like COVID changed the way MATLAB operates, MathWorks, and are any of the changes like there to stay for longer periods of time?
So that's a really great question, and at least for us, so the majority of MathWorks staff is located in Natick, right, in Natick, Massachusetts. So um, as for everyone there has been working from home since then, right? We've been working in a virtual setting. The beauty behind that is it hasn't really slowed us down in many areas, right? Interestingly enough, we've continued to hire. So we're still getting a lot of some of the best talent out there. Another thing is, by working from home, there's new efficiencies that have been made, but also there may be more flexibility in the future. It hasn't been determined yet, but I think with the fact that we've had already been using a lot of technology because we're in remote offices. So I mean, you saw that chart where we had like 31 offices around the world. We were already using virtual things like Teams, Zoom, and stuff like that to communicate with our other counterparts around the world. So we were already in a phase of being used to that, so to speak. The only difference is now we had to do it from home instead of being in a collective office. So that affected how we operated. But I think one of the benefits, or rather, one of the things that came out from COVID was that many universities, including UT Arlington, needed better access for how they could, work with students in an online or remote setting. And so there was a lot of work on my team's end, the customer success role, to help professors and other faculty to get their classes geared up and ready to go to be able to teach online in that setting. And Atul, I think that answered your first part of your question. What was the second part of your question again?
It was like, are these changes going to stay for longer period of time?
Right. So yeah, that's TBD. I think the change due to COVID has definitely enlightened us to a lot of new opportunities to operate as a business. However, nothing has been set in stone yet as to what the future will look like for how we do interactions and things like that.
Awesome.
Any other thoughts or questions or just curiosities? I mean, you could feel free to, anything. There's nothing really off the table here. If you have general questions about just the industry as well, because I did work for the industry prior to this, feel free to ask those questions too. I'm here to make myself accessible as a resource for any questions you might have in terms of preparing, since I assume many of you are probably graduating soon.
Hey, I have a quick question.
Hey,
How was your experience from going from a college to the workplace?
wonderful question. Um, I'm not sure how I could sum that up in the shortest amount of words, but it was, for lack of better terms, I was very unprepared leaving college and going into a job, right? Because my first job was I graduated as a mechanical engineer after college, and my first job was directly into Boeing. So I didn't have any internships before that or anything. Boeing was my first job. And I knew really no software skills at the time, maybe a little bit of MathCAD, but Python wasn't even really that popular at the time, and neither was, we used a very little bit of MATLAB, not a lot to be able to understand it and be familiar with it. And the first day on the job, my manager walks up to me and asks me, "Do you know how to use MATLAB?" And I just kind of sat there, dumbfounded, because it was like, that's not a skill that I have. And so that was one of the things that made it harder, was the software skill aspect. The second thing was really that transition between college to real engineering work, right? There's not really a nice transition there. It's just kind of like 0 to 1. And I graduated in 2012, so obviously things have changed, and I'm hoping things have improved, especially when it comes to capstone courses and things like that. But at least in my experience, what we did in a capstone course did not really reflect to what it was in the real world, right? We didn't factor in a lot of the things that matter. Like in capstone, it's one thing. We definitely focused a lot about schedule. We definitely focused a lot about cost. But we didn't focus nearly as much on safety and requirements, and the importance of what it means to be an engineer, in terms of doing well for mankind, basically making sure that the work that you do is done right. Right, doesn't matter whether it's, like I was saying before, a toaster, a washer, a dishwasher, a dryer, or even all the way to an airplane, right? And so there's a lot of realizations that aren't made known until you're in the industry. And I personally think that's the wrong time to learn it, because there's a whole lot more risk now. There's a whole lot more consequences now, right? As an engineer in the field, right? Anything that you touch, and I'll never forget this, that my mentor told me this when I first got into Boeing, and he was very right. He mentioned that anything that you touch has the potential to create a smoldering crater with the remains of many different souls. And that really struck me. I didn't know what that meant at the time. I couldn't fathom it. But he was right. I mean, I don't think anyone is any stranger to the recent issues that Boeing has had in the past year or two. And these are the real life consequences. These are the things that you don't get prepared for in school, but there are skills that you can learn to help make sure that these things are far more preventable. And one of those big things is focusing on engineering safety, right? failing safe and safe life designs. And above all, which is one thing that I learned in more so in industry versus not learning it in undergrad, was the importance of requirements, right? The constraints of your problem, right? You're basically writing down statements that say this is how your product will actually operate and design under these kinds of conditions, and sticking by those requirements and making sure that they're properly written to the appropriate standard, so that no matter what, even if this product fails, it doesn't end up harming anyone, right? Because again, the safety point is paramount when it comes to engineering. So now, Ajit, I think that was a very long-winded way of answering your question about that transition, but that was what it was like for me. I definitely hope it's not that same way for any of you, but I will encourage you all to be more diligent, if you haven't already, about the consequences of the engineering field and how to prepare yourself when it comes to thinking about safety and thinking about understanding the requirements for the system that you're intending to design.
I think your response was very insightful to me. I appreciate you very much for sharing your experience.
Absolutely, happy to.
Hi, Chad. I have one question for you. So, what skills do you look for EDG positions, and are any projects or certifications helpful for that role?
Yeah, so thanks for that question. And remind me if I'm pronouncing your name right. It's Niharika?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, perfect. So in terms of skills, I think it's good to have any projects that you've done, like if you've worked with student groups and things like that, that's also good, because within EDG, I mean, it's kind of like a big family. You're going to be working with many different people at the same level, many different new hires, along with being paired with others who are more experienced to help guide you and train you. So again, I think one of the big things there is knowing how to work in a group environment effectively and efficiently. Um, and overall with skills, like I said, the technical stuff is already there. It really just comes down to how you sell yourself as an individual, and kind of what your goals and ambitions are. Like, many companies ask you, why do you want to come work for us? Please answer that question truthfully. Answer it, but when I say truthfully, I mean answer it in a way in which it actually manifests something or means something to you personally, right? You just saying, you want to get a job. If there's other people who actually have a passion for this, they're probably going to get in before you. So it's really about, and trust me, we all want jobs after college. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. We all do, no question about it. Uh, but I will say this, even being in the field for about 10 years now, make sure that if you're going to apply for a job, it is something that you're actually going to like, right? That may sound contrary because the money sounds good when you get out of college. Trust me, I was a broke college student. I know what that's like. But I can assure you, the money means nothing if you're not actually happy with what you're doing. So that's also a big consideration to have. Remember, this is for all of you, when you're going into an interview, remember, it's not just a one-way street. They're not just interviewing you, you're interviewing them too, because you want to see if you actually fit in at this company. So you also have to keep that in mind, right? So again, when it comes to skills, I'd say definitely it's a soft skills for sure. Communication of ideas, making sure that you've actually had some experience with student groups, that definitely helps when it comes to showing that you know how to work in teams and things like that. And then typically when it comes down to it, a lot of the entry level positions, they typically end up coming down to GPA as well. So I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that because I'm not sure that's specifically it for the EDG program. However, entry level jobs in particular is kind of how they filter through people. So GPA is also important, but I'd say the bigger thing beyond GPA is how you present yourself, right? Show how you're going to be an asset. Again, show how you're going to be an asset to the company, right? understand the company, understand what they're doing, understand where they're going, right? Like I was talking about the mega trends, right? Where it's talking about electrification, AI, and stuff like that. You have to put yourself in with that future vision, because when you're talking to these interviewees, you want them to understand that you have taken stake within the company and you want to help drive them towards their goals. So hopefully that was helpful.
Yes, it was. Thank you so much. And from your response, I am guessing that the culture at MathWorks is cross-functional, collaborative. So you will have to work with a lot of teams, right?
Yes, you will. A lot of teams, a lot of people, and again, we're a very diverse company around the world, so a lot of different time zones. But it's
Right. That
beautiful. But
sounds
it's
like
beautiful.
fun.
Yeah, it is. It is, because you get to interact with folks from many different cultures. So it's always, you're finding a way to get the best of both worlds in all that you do, getting ideas of how things work in different markets versus your market, and seeing how you can merge some of those ideas to help each other. So overall, the cross-functional teams definitely provide a great benefit for your growth, without a doubt.
Great. Thank you so much, Chad. I was also looking forward to ask if we can get any LinkedIn link for your profile or your email ID where we can reach out to you even after this event.
Sure. Yeah. I can go ahead and drop my email in the chat window. I would share LinkedIn if I had one, but that's also it's also a sign of the times.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, if you have any follow-up questions or thoughts, when it comes to the industry, if you don't have them now, feel free to send me an email here.
We have another question on the chat by Shan. What drives innovation at MathWorks?
So that's a good question. A lot of it comes. It's interesting because a lot of it comes from academia. A lot of it comes from industry, right? There's going to be. It's kind of like discovering new things and seeing what sticks, right? I mean, at first when you saw the first when the Prius came out, it was like, oh, it's an electric vehicle, but did anyone really think those were going to stick? Did anyone think people are really going to drive that further? Did anyone think Tesla was going to come out of nowhere and kind of swallow up and dominate the market? Not necessarily. So the innovation really comes from customer, and that's both academic, government, or business related. When we say customer pains, right? Because the idea is we're focusing on helping customers get through their workflows. We want to make sure that they're going to be able to be successful in the engineering work that they do, right? Each of these companies and businesses and academics, they're all good at what they do, but we're providing a workflow or a set of tools that help to increase their capability of doing what they do best. So yeah, the innovation definitely comes from the constant feedback and understanding of our customers and what's going on in the field, where things are going, where they see things heading, especially for their own internal technology. And that allows us to help to develop better products to meet their workflows, and many more who are doing the same.
Awesome. That was really helpful. And we'll also post the recording of this event on our YouTube channel, if that's okay with you.
Sure thing.
Awesome. And we would like to have you more on further events with Engineering Student Council, because this was really great.
Oh, don't worry. I am one of the dedicated engineers for UT Arlington, so you can't get rid of me that easy. I'll be around.
Awesome.
So
I
if
have
we
a,
don't have any more
I
questions,
have,
yeah, go ahead, Navjeet.
I have a quick comment. This was a great presentation. I really enjoyed it, and I think you're like a great speaker.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Appreciate it.
Yes, I'm sure, Chad, I speak on behalf of everyone who's attending. We really enjoyed the presentation and we look forward to stay in touch and keep inviting you for our events in the future as well. Thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it.
Most definitely. Thank you all for listening, and hopefully I'll see some of you soon. If not, and you are graduating, then good luck to you. Well wishes, and do your best.
I think we have one last question from Danny. Writing that we know MATLAB in resume helps for any engineering roles. Uh,
Let's see. Writing that we know MATLAB in the resume. Definitely. I would say it definitely helps.
awesome.
Yeah, I would say not only just MATLAB, but again, remember when I talked about what the other companies are doing? Having some form of software knowledge on your resume is a good thing because that's where the industry is at. So obviously, it looks good if you put MATLAB on your resume if you're applying at MathWorks, but Python again or R is good as long as you have some computational thinking experience. I think that's a major key. So if you know more than just MATLAB, then that's also good too. Let's see. Do we also need to specify exactly what we know in MATLAB? No. It's I think the idea is there's you want to just let it be known you know MATLAB, and if you end up receiving an interview, that's when you can discuss more about what you know in MATLAB, what you've done with it, any specific projects that you've done with it that might, be of interest to the interviewers and things like that. So yeah, I would say it's MATLAB by itself on the resume is good enough. But if you get into the interview stage, then by all means, if it's beneficial to the conversation that you're having, it would be good to list out any projects that you've done in MATLAB and kind of what you use to accomplish those projects.
We have one last question that
So
on Alicia.
portfolios.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you suggest making portfolios for the projects we have done? I think it'd be a good thing to definitely keep a record of all the work that you've done for sure, any projects that you've done, because I think that's a good thing to show to anyone, right? Any employer, if you have to show that you know MATLAB or anything else like that. So it's always definitely good to have in your back pocket. They may not even ask for it, but it's always good to have it in case it helps. Again, you want to be able to tell a good story, right? And so if you have the ability to weave in any of these projects from these portfolios that you have into the conversation to help the interviewers better understand your skills and what you're good at and what you're interested in, then that's all the better for that opportunity. Oh, that's a really good question, Shan. And we have one more. I think I have one more minute before I have to let it go to the next person. So I'll tell you that in the shortest amount of words, if I think I understand your question correctly, basically is why did I choose to continue to work for MathWorks to grow my career rather than staying at Boeing? It's because of those things that I mentioned earlier. It's because of those revelations that I had about not having those experiences or that knowledge coming out of undergrad. So I wanted to take my experiences from the industry at Boeing, bring them back into education, which is where I'm at now within the MathWorks, to be able to talk to people such as yourselves to give you that perspective and make sure that you guys have a better opportunity than I did when I came out of college.
Awesome. I'm sure we have more questions, but students can contact you using the email. It's a
For
really
sure.
great. It was really great
Absolutely.
having you.
100%. Great to be here, and hope to be able to speak with the rest of you again soon.
Mhm.